Let's see. Okay, well, welcome everyone. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2026 and the first of our cities, towns, and counties webinar series, our lunchtime series that we host about monthly. I am Julie Judkins. I am the coordinator for the Great Trails State Coalition, and I'm so excited for our speakers and our presentation today, which I will introduce in just a few minutes. But first, wanted to welcome everybody and encourage you to say hi and introduce yourselves in the chat. It's lunchtime, so maybe tell us what's for lunch. And also, if you had an opportunity to celebrate first day outdoors, I'd love to hear where you went. Um, so a little bit for, hopefully we've got some new folks on the line. I'm going to give you a bit of a high level welcome and overview about the Great Trails State Coalition. The vision of the coalition is really for all 100 North Carolina counties to enjoy the health and safety, economic development, tourism, transportation, and environmental benefits of trails. And what that success looks like for the coalition is adequate and recurring funding for the Great Trail State programs, for state policies and programs to support trail development and management, and a really strong and popular Great Trail State brand that anybody can use here in North Carolina. So, really, just wherever you are in North Carolina, we don't want you to be very far from a great trail experience. Our brand, this Great Trail State brand, is for everyone to use. Nonprofits, municipalities, counties, agencies, industry partners, the kinds of trails that we are advocating for, promoting, and supporting are all different kinds of trails, all surfaces, and all user types. So we, again, really want to see this grow into all 100 counties here in North Carolina as a state, collectively celebrating our Great Trails state. So we are currently at 134 members and we are growing. So if you're not a member, please reach out and let me know if I can talk to you about it. It's it's a great opportunity to join a lot of really fun and smart folks working for trails across the state. Those folks who are newer members in 2025 are highlighted in orange here. Um, and of course, we can't do this work without our agency partners, and we do all of our work and coordination and support with them, and are so grateful for the work that they do across the state. So these webinar series are it's an opportunity for us to hear from experts and to share what's happening in our cities, towns, and counties across North Carolina, for us to learn. And it's for not just coalition members, but all communities and all towns across North Carolina. And a resource that we're growing. So we're recording all of the sessions and putting them in a library that you can find on our website, greattrailsnc.com. It's actually on the Great Trails State Coalition website, and that's listed here at the bottom. And I'm sure Palmer can put that in the chat for us. And so thank you to Curtis and to Matt and John, who are going to be sharing with us today about the work that they've been doing to engage communities in the SEAM, a multi-jurisdictional approach to this trail. And also, please dial in and register for our February 10th session, Designing the Intersection of NCDOT's prioritization and their trail projects. So hear from Gretchen and Sarah on February 10th. And we will have a lot more coming up, and you'll be able to register and find those on our website. And if you have suggestions about topics that you want to hear, I'd love to hear from you. So please do be in touch and let us know your thoughts. So this Great Trails State brand is available to everyone to use, and we have open source logos and toolkits and resources for everyone to have at their fingertips. Also on our website, the toolkits have all of the logos available for download and are really easy and give ideas about how to utilize all of the logos. We also on our website have the opportunity to share your events. So if you have events that you want to upload, you can go to our events calendar there, or feel free to just email me at any time and I'll be happy to populate that for you. And one of the best ways to leverage your events and your organizations and your work is to tag us in your social media posts. So great at Great Trails NC or hashtag Great Trails NC. We have a great following of over 20,000, I think it is, on Instagram and are on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. And lastly, I couldn't help but plug this really exciting opportunity for all of us to gather in person in August in Winston-Salem. Our Great Trail State Conference is happening August 10th through 12th. And the call for proposals is out. So if you want to share information about your own trail system or funding opportunities, please do get those proposals in. They are due on March 6th. We also have a call out for sponsors right now. So if we have some amazing sponsors so far, thank you so much. We've added those here on the right. As a member, their sponsors do get a discount for sponsorship, and that sponsorship discount ends on April 30th, as does the early bird registration. Registration opens on February 16th, and lastly, April 30th is when we'll announce all of the proposals. And if you have a film that you've been working on and sharing, we are going to have a film fest. So the call for that's out as well. All can be found on our website. And with that, I am going to turn it over to who's up first? Matt?
I think I am.
Oh, Curtis. Great.
All right.
I'll
Well,
let
appreciate
each of you introduce yourselves, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. Appreciate the opportunity. My name is Curtis Bridges. I'm a planner with CRTPO, that's the Charlotte Regional MPO, and a lot of our active transportation initiatives, along with some other tasks. And I will maybe I'll turn it over to Matt and John just to introduce yourselves, and then I'll get back to our slides.
Sure thing. I'll introduce myself. My name is Matt Weschler. I'm a civil engineer and planner here at Land Design, and excited to talk to you all today about the SEAM.
Hey, everybody. Happy trails. Happy New Year. John Koch, transportation planner at Bolton and Menk, and we were sub-consultants supporting Land Design in the SEAM Trail planning process. Glad to be here.
All right, cool. Well, we'll get back to the presentation. And we originally presented a version of this at the Great Trail State Conference almost a year and a half ago, back in fall of 2024. It's been a really eventful couple of years for the SEAM. And again, we appreciate any opportunity to come and share with you. So what is the SEAM? The SEAM is a 70-plus mile regional greenway corridor connecting Statesville and Iredell County through uptown Charlotte and down to Pineville and the South Carolina state line. It's also a major spine corridor on the Carolina Thread Trail. When complete, the SEAM will link 8 downtowns, 2 counties, really 2 states, based on some work being done on the South Carolina side. We expect 102,000 residents to be within walking distance of the SEAM, and we expect about 425,000 jobs within biking distance of the SEAM. Looking at as we have been engaged in this effort, one of the major milestones for us was adoption of the SEAM Advancement Study. When we presented at Great Trail State in 2024, we had literally like just finished the study. I think Matt and his team had just finished delivering some deliverables to us, and so we were really excited at that time. When we initiated the advancement study, the steering committee, which was comprised of each of the cities, towns, and counties along the corridor, identified several project goals which were critical to the development of the corridor. Those were equity, which at the time was not a four-letter word, connectivity, safety, trail experience, implementation, and culture. Those were the primary goals for the study. Our steering committee also was intimately involved in drilling down on the actual alternate alignments and developed several criteria to evaluate those alignments. Those were the directness of route, the trail character, speed of implementation, the accessibility from home, separation from traffic, connection to destinations, trail comfort, which was a big one, and access for disadvantaged communities. I know Matt's going to dive more into how the study addressed each of those goals and those criteria. I think first John is going to share some important background and history on the seamless.
Thanks, Curtis. So this trail story, like so many, it starts a long time ago, and as you all know, these ideas they take so long to come from kind of vision into even the stage we're in now. But one of the other sort of stories and lessons learned from this is you need champions at so many different levels, and the story of this corridor is one of champions from diverse partnerships and kind of the coalition that is required, and the willingness to be open to wherever those champions come from. So in the early 2000s, the Charlotte region was beginning to look at a commuter rail corridor on an existing rail line from Charlotte that would go up to Mooresville. And I think there were both at the local government level, the regional government level, and even the citizen level, some ideas stirred up by that about, wouldn't it be great to have a parallel multi-use path that went along that future commuter rail line, similar to what like the WNOND that parallels, I think it's Interstate 66 in the DC area, or the trail that parallels the light rail line in the Portland area. So there were some conversations happening, including from advocates, including somebody who was on the Huntersville Greenway Committee, and as well as staff from Mecklenburg County who does the greenways in the county, or many of them, and then staff from Huntersville and CRTPO sort of began to hatch a plan in parallel to convene some folks, get some members together, begin to envision this and do a very high level feasibility study, which when it was initially started would only go from downtown Charlotte to Mooresville, roughly paralleling what would be the future commuter rail line. And as Curtis and Matt will tell you, the vision has expanded. It's now potentially a bi-state study, at least, and potentially 2 MPOs, further into Mecklenburg County, et cetera. But when it started, it was just downtown Charlotte and hopefully as far as Mooresville. But also thinking about how it could be a project that stood on its own legs even if the commuter rail didn't happen. Here we are 25 years later, commuter rail still hasn't happened. The commuter rail is still an idea. In some ways, the SEAM vision has advanced faster in some ways than the rail vision, and now rail is starting again. So in 2023, and again, this is a story of partnerships, a champion who happened to sit on staff at City of Charlotte, helped to convene some partners in the region alongside CRTPO to get funding for another study, which is what we're presenting to you today. And so I'm going to turn it over to Matt to sort of talk to you about the evolution of this kind of the SEAM 2.0, which we started back in 23.
Thanks, John. Yeah, that's a good summary of how we got to 2023, which is really when I got involved with the project, and there was a number of us, both at Land Design, but also at Bolton and Menk and Alta, and a few other sub-consultants who got together to help move this phase one project planning study forward. So, as John was saying, we kicked off the phase one study in 2023. The primary objective of that study was to be an update to the Mooresville to Charlotte Trail plan, except now we were extending the alignment north from the previous northern terminus of Mooresville through Iredell County, through the town of Troutman, and all the way to Statesville. And then to also extend it south all the way to the South Carolina state line, and then also to revisit the alignment in light of all the ped bike plans published and adopted over the previous 10 years. It was awesome, to go back and read those plans and see all the work that had been done during that time period to really advance the idea of ped bike through these two counties within each jurisdiction, and it gave us really a lot of very solid alignment options to help inform this study. So John mentioned the commuter rail, which is called the Lynx Red Line here in the Charlotte area. And for those who are unfamiliar with the status of that project, that was the city of Charlotte purchased the rail tracks from Norfolk Southern back in 2024, which is really exciting news when we were able to share that. And then just in November, Mecklenburg County voters approved a sales tax referendum to advance the project's implementation. So that project, after kind of sitting on the shelves for a long time period, is now moving forward. So our goal from the SEAM was to really align these planning initiatives to the extent that we could, thinking about access to these future Red Line commuter rail trail stations, and then in addition to that, really thinking now of this north-south corridor, which is the highest trafficked corridor in North Carolina, and I think potentially in the Southeast, or one of the greatest. We have the I-77, which is for cars and buses and freight. We have the commuter rail that's coming in, so we've got this mass transit option as well. And then the SEAM really kind of becomes that north-south ped bike alignment. So this whole area is really transitioning over the years to come to a multimodal corridor. We're also thinking about the SEAM as the central spine of the Carolina Thread Trail Network, which, for those who are unfamiliar, is a 15-county plan for a regional connected trail system. And while our study focused on two counties, Mecklenburg and Iredell, as John mentioned, there's been a lot of interest recently on continuing trails into York and Lancaster counties. So there is the potential for the SEAM to become not just a multi-jurisdictional trail, but multi-state trail with multiple MPO involvements in the years to come, which is a really exciting possibility. And then the goal here is for the SEAM to be the connective thread to the broader regional trail system, especially in Mecklenburg County, with major greenways extending east and west from the proposed SEAM alignment. So for those who are familiar with some of the sort of prime trails in the Charlotte region, the SEAM will be a connector between Irwin and Stewart Creek Greenways, Long Creek Greenway, the Blue Line rail trail, the future Silver Line rail trail, when that gets implemented. So it really has a tremendous amount of value in giving people a way to get from one east-west corridor to another east-west corridor through this north-south corridor. So when we kicked this project off, it was very much it's sort of hard to wrap your head around around planning a 70-mile greenway. It's, we're used to doing half a mile at a time. So this is definitely a really huge undertaking to try to arrive at an alignment, get in one fell swoop. So, the process that we went through was basically one of, process of elimination, where we took all the existing and planned trails put forth over the years from the Carolina Thread Trail, the county, local governments, NCDOT, STIP projects, funded CIP projects, and then, kind of threw them all onto a single map, which we call the spaghetti map of options. So, this is kind of like the starting point. Let's get all the ideas out there. We drafted some additional ideas that hadn't been published previously, that members of the steering committee put forth, or there was creek corridors or sewer alignments, things like that we thought of as prospective candidates. So we got them all in one place. So this is all these alternatives are out there as a CAD file and a shape file for download, so you can go back and revisit any of these alignments in the future if desired. But from this, we sort of needled it down to a more limited set of what seemed to be really potentially compelling alignments that followed either existing greenways or greenways that had already been planned, or were aligning with projects that were already in the works. So we from that, we enumerated every alternative alignment, and ultimately broke the entire alignment into different analysis segments for decision making. So we ultimately had 10 different segments, and for a couple of these segments, there really was one. The whole steering committee aligned on really just one option that seemed the most compelling. So, for example, the uptown Charlotte to South Carolina state line portion, which is our longest segment, that didn't really have any other alternatives. There's a really good planning that's been done in the past by Mecklenburg County for the future Big Sugar Creek Greenway. So it's for those who are familiar with the region, there's Little Sugar Creek. Big Sugar Creek would be an even longer greenway that kind of follows the west side of Charlotte and provides access to greenways to a part of the community that lacks good trail access today. So everyone felt pretty comfortable about moving forward with that option. And then from there, moving north, we had a number of segments where there's some really great alternatives considered. So we passed those into this next stage of analysis, which included a set of scoring criteria. So we enumerated each alternative, and we scored each of the alignments based on criteria and weights established by the steering committee. And broadly, that scoring criteria fell into three large buckets. There was feasibility, experience analysis, and access analysis. And there's sub criteria under that, and then there's multipliers based off of what the committee members felt was most important in terms of goals for the team. So some of the things that really stood out were trying to minimize conflicts with vehicles. So minimizing the number of road crossings, separation from traffic, but then also access to major destinations, aligning with trail-oriented development, the directness of the route, so avoiding circuity, and then, of course, from an implementation standpoint, funding and costs were certainly significant. So for each alternative we looked at, so this, for example, this is the Mooresville to Mount Morn segment. We ended up with 4 different alternatives that we studied. We established weighted scores for each of those, and from that we could arrive at a letter grade assigned to each alignment alternative, which ultimately is what informed the decision making for arriving at what we call the preliminary preferred alignment. So 70 miles is a really long stretch to go, but it was important to the steering committee to conclude the study with one preferred alignment that could be the basis of all future studies. So we recognize this this particular project didn't include specific collaborations with every property owner along the route. So there'll be opportunities that come up in the future for sure, for alternative trail alignments that could be considered. There'll probably be portions that can't move forward. So there's flexibility with all the alternatives that we consider throughout the process to look at different alignments, but we really wanted to start at what the preliminary preferred option was at the beginning, and then allow that to be sort of the basis for future planning and design work moving forward. And with over 70 miles, we weren't able to establish specific cross sections for each segment, but instead opted to define trail typologies, which spoke to both the variety of facility types we imagine being a component of the seam, from sort of what we think of, true, asphalt greenways next to a creek corridor, all the way through, urbanized downtown shared use path or shared street options. So, we thought of this, kind of following a transect from rural to urban with some transitional facilities along the way. So, there's the naturalized corridor through, there's going to be parkland, campus, rural highway, rural roadway, commercial thoroughfares, residential neighborhoods, historic residential neighborhoods, what we're calling secondary downtown, and finally Main Street downtown. So each typology has kind of a set of intended design guidance to help inform what the seam could be in those environments. But then we also wanted to sort of document and consider the diversity of trail experience along the entire route. We didn't want this to be just a trail that's adjacent to a creek for the entire 70-mile duration, but really, for the people who are coming out to do a 2-day trip on the seam, or the more ambitious types who want to try to knock this whole thing out in one day, really think about the alignment as providing true mix of what this region can offer in terms of experience, and to really cater to a diversity of experiences for people who want different kinds of environments to bike, walk, or scooter through. So here's some of the renderings, some more natural corridor typology through the more sort of side path, rural highway typology, all the way through, urban Main Street, which might be most appropriate for the alignment that's proposed through downtown Mooresville or Statesville or some of the other towns that are along the way. So with that, I'll pass it back to Curtis, who I think is going to touch base on next steps.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So, what the immediate future looks like for us in CRTPO and our SEAM Advisory Committee, which was established in 2025, is continue to seek funds for planning, design, and implementation. We have access to some MPO discretionary grants, so that those are typically initiated at the local level. Our local cities and towns and local agencies will apply for these grants with some matching funds, and that we are able to select particular planning projects and design projects based on criteria to advance them. And we hope to continue to do that with the SEAM and some of those SEAM segments as they become viable. Many of our municipalities are incorporating the SEAM into their conditional rezonings. We're starting to see that pop up more and more, especially in our kind of northern Mecklenburg towns where there's a lot of development, and just other towns where we're seeing a lot of development pressure, where we're seeing those rezonings come in. Our SEAM is also looking to fund a larger phase 2 planning and design scope. We've had some involvement in some kind of recent planning grants for ATIP at the federal level, also Raise and Build. We're hoping maybe in the future there'll be a future Great Trail State grant that we can have access to, hint, hint. And then there's some other kind of behind the scenes initiatives that we're working on to, in particular, build a buzz, which was one of the recommendations coming out of the SEAM advancement study, which is really finding trail champions for the segments and for the entire corridor as a whole, and kind of moving forward with some other activities to advance the corridor and kind of build recognition and a priority for the corridor. So that's what we're working on, and looking forward to some additional activities here in the very near future. And then, of course, you can help us plan the scene. Matt and the folks at Land Design and some other sub-consultants came up with this nice website for us. And I think this link and QR code should still take you right to the website. You can look at kind of previous planning efforts, upcoming planning efforts, news and updates on the scene, as well as our kind of story map, which lets you kind of go through and look at a day on the scene. And you can scroll through and look at each of those segments and kind of see some of the destinations, downtowns in particular, like coffee shops and parks and other destinations along that corridor that you can access within probably a day's travel along the scene. So we're excited about that, excited to share it, and hope you'll visit the website. I think with that, unless Matt or John, you had any other comments, I think we can get into some Q&A, some questions.
Thank you all so much. It's so fascinating to hear about all of the thinking and analysis that goes in to these projects, and your thinking behind all of the alignments and your preferred and preliminary alignments, and the considerations for diverse experiences. So I'm so grateful to hear about all of them. I will ask folks if you've got questions, we would love to hear them. This is usually the best part. We get into the juicy stuff. So feel free to come off of mute or pop your question in the chat.
I have a lot of questions, but I'll kick off, and then I let others ask too, for ask my other ones. But wondering, like, who's your champion for the scene when it comes to just really moving it forward? I get there's like staff support, you've got the MPO involved, but like, who are your champions? Where have you found effective champions?
That's an excellent question. You're right. We do have a lot of local champions, and kind of our challenge now is to find those champions, some additional champions, some for the entire corridor. I'll say my role at the MPO is to kind of maintain the vision for the corridor, pull our SEAM advisory committee together, again, which is a collection of all those stakeholders along the trail, along the corridor, and kind of move the vision forward. But I think the next thing that we've talked about doing is finding those champions and kind of getting them kind of in place, kind of cemented, and having folks who will regularly sell this to elected officials, sell it to folks who have some money and funds that want to contribute and see the corridor built out. So that's what we're doing now, and we're excited about it. There's no shortage of folks who want to be involved in it and want to be champions. It's just kind of getting them and giving them a kind of forum and place to kind of land and begin doing some of that work.
Yeah, and
Curtis, can I jump in on that too?
Sure. Yeah.
One of I think the challenges of this quarter from the beginning, and initially Mecklenburg County was kind of taking the lead, but then it gets really complicated when you go to the next county, right? And then, as Curtis mentioned, when you go to the next MPO or the next state, CRTPO doesn't have, can't suggest what our FATs and the South Carolina partners are going to do. So you've got, in our region, we've got the Carolina Thread Trail, the nonprofit, but and this is a priority corridor for them, but they also are trying to pay attention to a 15 county region and not put all of their eggs in sort of the corridor that probably has the most resources of anywhere in the region. So there was a nascent kind of Friends nonprofit that was trying to struggle to form and then sort of, didn't really get off the ground. But I think, long term, you do need something like that, and that somebody that can interface seamlessly with all of the different jurisdictions and partners, and not be constrained by state and county boundaries. So the good news is so many of the local partners, the towns and cities, have been implementing kind of on their own piece by piece. So that's one of the success stories. And getting the brand was a big success story as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I'll add. Oh, sorry. I was just going to add. I think where things stand right now is the goal of building the buzz, amongst stakeholders, and Curtis has been doing a great job, and his team of kind of sharing the news of the scene. Within the phase one planning study, we didn't have like a huge outreach, just both because it was potentially going to conflict with some of the messaging that was happening with the red line at the time, but also with just from it was somewhat of a limited scope. So the hope is that with a phase two study, that's really going to focus on building support within each of the towns and building champions and trying to create some really compelling graphics that can get people excited and get the not just the critical stakeholder support, but the public support to reinforce the desire to get this thing funded. And in the meantime, there's awesome opportunities to advance kind of different portions piecemeal, which Curtis has been and the CRTPO folks have done a great job of coordinating.
well, I think, investing in the branding and all the foundational structure is amazing. So congratulations on all the great work you've done, and the passing that sales tax issue in November is huge. So
Yeah.
congratulations on that. All right, I'll wait to ask my other questions.
We've got a couple popping up in the chat here. There's still a couple preferred alignments in the city of Statesville. Can someone provide a little explanation or overview of that? And then also from George, is this a candidate for Partners for Parks?
Well, I can speak to the alignment. So we got a little cute in Statesville because we wanted to make it like the end of the thread to create kind of a loop condition. So there's in collaboration with Statesville, there were kind of two alternatives that were quite compelling in terms of the way that we could get through Statesville, and we definitely had like a defined entrance. But then to sort of round out the study area, we created a loop at the end, so you could actually come up one side of Statesville, and I think it's the Fourth Creek Greenway, and then it comes back the other direction to kind of. So if you want to do a yo-yo situation and go one way and go the other way, you can do that at the northern terminus there.
We also have a question, if one of you could speak to the relationship with the Carolina Thread Trail and to clarify what happened with the red line. If you could recap that.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So I think the first part of that was the relationship with the Carolina Thread Trail. This corridor, I think, has always been one of the corridors on the Carolina Thread Trail. What was the kind of Mooresville-Charlotte Trail, and it's now expanded, lengthened again to go from Statesville to the state line. So that corridor has always been there. We now it would seem trail kind of envision as being one of the major spine trails because it would be so long, 70 plus miles. But we work with the Carolina Thread Trail. They're on our SEMA advisory committee. As they cross off segments, we will happily, take that as a win for us as well. And where those segments of the Carolina Thread Trail overlap with the seam, and there are many of them. So technically, it's part of the Thread Trail network, although they are kind of two separate efforts, tied together, but still a bit separate. I think the second part of that was related to the Red Line Trail and what the history, or you're asking kind of the status of that. What happened back when we first began the SEAM advancement study is that we started the study. This was initiated by the city of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County, just to update that Mooresville-Charlotte Trail to kind of look at that expanded length from Statesville to the state line. About not even midway through the study, we started hearing rumblings about, hey, looks like cats might actually have an opportunity to buy the red line. We're like what? Like that was, this is what we had dreamt about for years and years and gave up on years ago. And then turns out cats had an opportunity to acquire the red line, and maybe we would have an opportunity to actually use that corridor. So we kind of adjusted our scope so that we could kind of take a step back with the study and kind of see what ended up happening with the red line, and then kind of pick up from there. So that's what Matt's kind of referencing when we talked about that scope and kind of what changed a little bit throughout the course of that study. We are still working with cats to kind of figure out where we can cut across and through their right of way. It's not a fee simple right of way that the red line has. It's essentially kind of functions like easement, and there are underlying property owners, and there's some other issues with width constraints. So it's a kind of still a bit of a struggle to work with cats on that corridor and figure out where we can kind of combine some efforts and have some actual design within the corridor. But we are looking at connections to their station areas and connections to other points of interest along the red line corridor. So that's where it stands. We still have some things to figure out from a design perspective. That's kind of the history there.
Thank you. Thanks for your question. Okay, from Luke, we've got, have you considered designated campsites? And I think as a separate question, he's asking if anyone has successfully collaborated with U.S. Fish and Wildlife on trail projects.
That's a great question. I can't speak to collaborations. Has anyone collaborated with them? I have not. I can't speak to it. Haven't considered campsites though yet, but I absolutely will, because I enjoy camping and I would like to do that on the thread trail and the seam. So we'll definitely take that into consideration. I'll let someone else speak to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife coordination.
Yeah, I don't for this. Well, I guess I don't have anything to add to you. Well, if there's others in the group who've worked with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, please feel free to chat. I love the idea of campsites. I think that part of what we're also hoping to do is this. The seam is intended to be an economic catalyst for the towns along the route. So we're also hoping that people elect to stay in, Cornelius or downtown Davidson or Huntersville, and go out to eat and enjoy, stay at a hotel there, or contribute some tourism dollars to local downtowns too. So there's a balance there in terms of trying to point people towards to the towns as part of an economic development drive as well.
Luke, feel free to come off mute if you want to maybe broaden or your question about fish and wildlife, but I'll move on to Jason's question. Exciting that the Big Sugar and Irwin Creek system is considered into the plan, even though much of the focus is on north-south and Charlotte. Can you elaborate on how that was considered?
I can speak to that. So this was a decision that I think the steering committee aligned on pretty early in the process, mostly because in terms of planned continuous greenways from uptown to the South Carolina state line, there's really not that many alternatives to do so. And Little Sugar Creek was already part of the the Cross Charlotte Trail alignment, and we kind of didn't want to just claim Cross Charlotte Trail as part of the seam to that seemed like cheating. And there was there's real initiative moving forward from the county on getting portions of the Big Sugar Creek Greenway completed, and the Irwin Creek Greenway too, for the extension that for the portions that would extend north out of uptown. So in terms of actual future trail projects that could be incorporated into the seam, that was the best contender to get us down to the South Carolina state line. It also scored quite heavily when it for some of the criteria that we were looking at, including access to disadvantaged communities and historically disadvantaged communities as well.
Palmer, I think you had more questions you were
Yeah,
holding for because we've come to the end of our chat questions.
sure. A couple, like one is, do y'all already have some interjurisdictional agreements that you have hammered out thus far?
Interjurisdictional agreements for actual
For the project as a whole,
project.
I'm really looking for some model language is what I'm after.
I hear you.
Yeah.
It, we, I don't recall which of the jurisdictions I don't think our jurisdictions adopted the SEAM advancement study that we completed in 24. I don't believe that there were any resolutions passed, kind of saying, "Hey, we agreed to abide by the study," which we wouldn't ask them to do anyway. Each of the jurisdictions has the freedom to kind of complete the corridor within their jurisdiction as they need to, and needs change over time, particularly with active transportation. But our goal has been to help them kind of drill down on the corridors that we identified, that preferred alignment that we identified. And I think most of them have stuck to that, and kind of make sure that they can get across a challenging rail crossing or a bridge or whatever they run into. But to get back to your question, there haven't been any agreements with the jurisdictions to to coordinate on the corridor. Just kind of the involvement of the staff who've all been really committed to it in the past and continue to be committed to it through their work with the committee.
And just to pile on, Palmer, I think part of the answer to that question in Mecklenburg, and Jason Pauling and Curtis and Matt may have better details on this, but the model has been that municipal greenways that Mecklenburg County doesn't build or fund are oftentimes maintained by them. So that could be one of the modes of municipal cooperation, at least in Mecklenburg. But yeah, it is one of the sort of the outstanding questions for this corridor, especially as you get into the next county and the next state. What's the entity that can begin to manage both programming and some of those and maintenance and partner relationships and funding, including private funding.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. It's complicated stuff for sure. And then the funding so far you've gotten is through the MPO, the planning funding.
Yeah, planning and some design funding through our discretionary grants.
Mm-hmm.
But yes.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Those are my main questions.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank y'all. Very exciting.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, we're excited to share with you. Any other questions from any folks in the chat or reviewing? Okay.
Good. Thanks going on. We really appreciate you all sharing with us today and answering questions that I know a lot of us have for how to do in our own work. And we all need to come experience it.
One day, hopefully soon.
Yeah.
Well, and we hope there'll be some great Trail State program funding for your project in the future.
Yes.
We do too. Appreciate it.
All right, everybody. Well, we'll give you a few minutes back to finish up your lunches before heading into your next meetings, but we really appreciate everyone's participation and especially to our speakers for sharing about this project and the theme. So thanks so much, and we will see you in February for our next one.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.